Hey everyone, and welcome back to Ontario Cryptids. Looks like spring has finally sprung. I don't know about you, but it always takes a bit of time for my body to acclimate to daylight savings time. The rainy season has started, and I have to say it is nice to see the snow on my lawn finally melting away. On another note, I see you all have really enjoyed the shorts I posted last week. All of those came from Terry. It was evident you all really enjoyed them by the number of views they received. Thank you all for not only viewing them, but also leaving comments. As promised, I have completed transcribing Terry's encounters. Today you will hear 5 very unusual accounts that began from his early childhood and continue to present time. Okay, if you have an encounter story that you would like to share, then please forward your stories to OntarioCryptids@gmail.com. I would be honored to share your story with like-minded people. Now, sit back and relax as we begin with today's encounters. As stated previously, these events started in 1975 and they go on to present time. Most of the events takes place in Restigouche County, New Brunswick, and the nearest town is Charlo. In 1975, I was 7 years old. We lived in an old farmhouse on Mill Road in Charlo, New Brunswick. A family had moved in across the road and had brought in a mobile trailer home. It was a big one, probably 50 to 60 feet long. The family had 5 kids, 4 girls and a boy. 2 of the girls and their brother were older than me, and the other 2 were younger. I was right in the middle of them all. By the way, I had 2 sisters, and we would cross the road and play over there all the time. We were very poor. I didn't know we were poor until later in life. Well, we had our dog, and that's all we needed back then. One day, we were all playing outside on their side of the road. We were having fun running around playing like kids do. One of the girls noticed that someone or something was watching us play. It was standing at the back corner of the field. In 1975, we did not see many people around our area. That would be a rare event. The road we lived on had maybe 8 houses on it and few cars traveling on it due to the fact that we lived in the middle of nowhere. Anyways, we all stopped what we were doing when our attention was drawn to the back corner of the field. Again, we thought it was someone, but from a distance it was hard to tell. Being curious kids, all 8 of us took off to see who it was. As we got closer, things got weird. It was not a person at all. We got about 12 feet of this thing, which stood roughly 4 feet tall. Back then, I didn't really know what I was looking at. Now, I know it as a small gray. We all stopped and gathered around. No words were spoken. But he beckoned us with his hand, and we all followed through a little corner of the woods and down to this little valley behind a field. There, in front of us, was a ship, a round saucer-shaped ship. The last thing I remember was seeing the ship. I don't remember going inside, but my sister does. My sister remembers stuff that happened inside. I cannot recall what she said took place, and unfortunately, we don't speak anymore. I have not talked to her for over 10 years or so. According to my sister, all of us were in the craft for a few hours. The last thing I remember was seeing the ship. The next thing I remember was all of us back in the field playing behind a trailer, running around and playing like nothing happened. I think after they were done, they wiped all of our minds, except for my sister's. For some reason, she remembers bits and pieces. We lived in a 150-year-old timber frame farmhouse that was a story and a half. I used to sleep upstairs in the hallway on a cot just outside my parents' bedroom. The house only had 2 bedrooms upstairs. My sister slept in a little bedroom beside my parents' bedroom. The hallway had 2 big gable-end windows. You could look out the windows into the fields behind the house. There was a shed roof outside that window that would come off that side of the house. We didn't have air conditioning back then, so we would always sleep with the windows open. I don't even know if we had screens on the windows. The summers were always so hot. Anyways, I wake up one night for some reason in the middle of the night. I look outside the gable window and there's a creature on the roof looking in. I'm frozen solid with fear. The only thing I could do was breathe. I couldn't move a muscle. All I could do is look at the creature. This goes on for maybe 4 or 5 seconds, and then I black out. What I saw before me was a reptilian. It was crouched down looking at me through the window. The window was 5 feet in height, so it must have been taller than 5 feet, maybe 5.5 to 6 feet tall. This happened 2 more years in a row, the same sequence of events. I would wake up in the middle of the night to see the creature staring in the window at me. I would black out again, and then I would just wake up in the morning. I don't know what happened to me during my blackouts. It was like being under anesthetic. 1 minute you were out, and then you would just wake up. The next morning, I wouldn't remember a thing. It would be interesting to know the truth of what happened to me while I was out. I have concluded that I was abducted a total of 4 times. The first time, we almost voluntarily walked onto the saucer. The next 3 times, I was visited by the creature at my window. I remembered it was always on a very hot summer night when the window would be open. I would be laying there, and then this creature would paralyze me. The next day, I wouldn't remember a thing. It would not be until years later that I remembered these events. I wish I did remember so I could ask my family if they also had these visits from the reptilian. A couple of years later, our cousins came to stay with us. We were still quite young. We had a couple of extra rooms in the house. We were sleeping in the middle room of the house on the main floor. The room had a very small window and 2 doors. On this night, one of the doors were open and the other door was closed. I remember waking up in the night and seeing this woman in a white nightgown. She glides through the open door and glides out of the bedroom through the closed door. I sat there frozen as this semi-transparent apparition in a white gown floats across the room. She went straight through the closed door. I lay back down and I tried to go back to sleep, scared to death. The next morning, I go downstairs and I ask my mother, "Were you in our room last night?" She said no. So I told her about the woman in the white gown I saw last night. This was the first time I had an experience with a ghost. Years later, when my father passed away, my girlfriend and I were staying at the farmhouse. My girlfriend wakes up in the middle of the night. For a split second, she thought I was sitting on the edge of the bed. She sat up and asked, "Why are you smoking?" This was just after my father died. She had never met my father before. My father was a very small man, skinny, and would sit slightly hunched over with his legs crossed, and his legs were always going. He looked over at her, and she got really scared. She threw the blankets over her head and went back to sleep. Our farmhouse was definitely haunted. In 2018, my wife and I were sitting in the basement of our house one night. All of a sudden, my phone comes on and the screen lights up. I noticed the phone had been recording for the last 18 minutes. So we play it back, and we can hear ourselves talking. We were basically hearing the conversation we were having at the time. Then all of a sudden we can hear a voice come on my phone, and it said, "I dialed it, I dialed it, I dialed it, I dialed it," which we thought was really strange. A few weeks later, there was a psychic convention here in Oshawa down at the Legion. I will go down to the Legion to play darts. As I was walking up the Legion, there were two psychics standing outside having a smoke. I walked up to them and I say, "There's something strange going on." But before I can finish, one of them pipes up and says, "Well, your father is with you." I replied, "What?" And she continues with, "Yeah, when you were walking up, there was somebody with you. I think it's your father." So I told them about the phone recording incident, and she says that it was your father contacting you trying to tell you something. I never knew what he was trying to tell me. First of all, I would like to thank Terry for taking the time to talk to me and allow me to share his encounter on my channel. Terry, it was a pleasure chatting with you, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode. You have had some mind-blowing experiences, to say the least. I would love to know what happened to your kids on that craft during the 2 hours of missing time, not to mention what occurred with the reptilian at your window. Thanks again, Terry, for allowing me to share your encounter. This upcoming Sunday, I will be sharing more of Joe's encounter up in Alaska. He has submitted 2 encounters as promised. I can't wait to share those with you next week. Okay, if these stories remind you of an encounter that you may have had and would like to share, then please forward your stories to OntarioCryptids@gmail.com. I would be honored to share your story on this channel. Thank you for listening until the end. I truly appreciate it. Please hit the like button on your way out and smash the subscribe button if you're new to my channel. Oh yeah, and speaking of new to my channel, it looks like some of you heard my plea last week. I mentioned last week that 91.3% of my returning guests were not subscribed. So some of you heard my plea because, although minute, we are now sitting at 91.2% of returning guests who are not subscribed. So for those 91.2%, let's smash that subscribe button and become one of the OC community members. I'm going to end this off by saying, have a great weekend, and I hope to see you all next week right here on Ontario Cryptids.